Hi everyone, Flaming Footy here and welcome back to another YouTube video on the channel. And today guys, here we are going to be looking at every AFL team's run home in the 2022 AFL season. 3 matches to go. This is going to be the final one of the year. I did suggest a couple of weeks back that we will be doing another one of these, and here we are doing it for the final time this year. I think it's been really fun having a look at the teams' run homes. Now, last time I made slides up. This time I decided to hop on the AFL app and do it this way. But anyway, not going to waste any time. I'm going to go ahead, hop right into things. All 18 clubs will be included in this video, so make sure to keep watching. So anyway, first club is Adelaide. Now, we're going to be going back over their last week as well. So last week they beat Carlton by 29, but their run home is West Coast, North Melbourne and Port Adelaide. So reasonably, they are playing the bottom two teams in the next 2 weeks before playing Port Adelaide. So for the Adelaide Crows, West Coast in Perth could be hard. West Coast have been extremely competitive in the past, I don't know what you'd say, 5 or so weeks probably. They've been really competitive. Have West Coast, they've been really good in the past few weeks. And then North Melbourne, the Adelaide Oval should be no problems at all. And then Port Adelaide at the Adelaide Oval to finish off the year will be an interesting showdown. But yep. 2 of their last 3 games will be at the Adelaide Oval, which will make things easier for the Crows. But yeah, West Coast, North and Port is their run home. So now to Brisbane, as spots in the top 4 are getting limited, so they have to be pressing to try and win at least 2 of their last 3 games. They have Carlton at the Gabba, they have then St Kilda at Marvel and the Demons at the Gabba. So 2 of their last 3 games at the Gabba is really going to help. Carlton at the Gabba should probably be no problems. But yes, then they do have 2 more relatively tough games. Melbourne at the Gabba in round 23 is probably going to be whether they'll get a top 4 spot or not, depending on the result of that game, and also whether the Demons maybe slip outside the top 4 as well. So that game I feel like has a lot to go by. Probably the biggest game in round 23. St Kilda versus Brisbane in round 22 is massive, but again, you could probably feel like the Lions will get the job done, so they'll have to be winning these first 2. And I think it's going to be coming all down to round 23 when on a Friday night they'll be playing the Demons. And that's when we'll be learning a lot more of whether they'll be getting a home elimination final or a top 4 finish. It isn't the easiest run home for Brisbane, but again, if they can just try and win these first 2 and then go into round 23 with an open mind, it'll be interesting to see whether they finish top 4 or not. But I think, again, the centrepiece is going to be round 23. So now for Carlton, who have one of the toughest run homes in the competition. And actually, this run home is so tough, they might not even finish inside the top 8. Can you believe that? They're sitting in 7th. They have Brisbane at the Gabba, Melbourne at the MCG, and Collingwood at the MCG. So, look, you got to be thinking they just got to win 1 game, and then they're in the 8. So 1 game is all Carlton have to win, but whether they win a game or not is going to be interesting to see, because these games, Brisbane at the Gabba is tough. If it was at the MCG, it'd be a different story. But yes, Brisbane at the Gabba is tough. Melbourne at the MCG, that's going to be pretty tough. And then Collingwood will be an interesting one. So I think, again, a centrepiece for Carlton is round 23 versus Collingwood. I think there's going to be lots of centrepieces there for teams. But yeah, I think that's what's going to make up whether they are finished in the top 8 or not, because I feel like they will lose these 2 games. And I think round 23 versus Collingwood is going to be the massive moment. I think there's lots of big games around 23, and I think this one is going to be deciding if Carlton make the top 8 and if Collingwood make the top 4. So there's a lot going on in that game. And there's a lot going on for Collingwood, actually playing the 3 away games. They're in 3 away games, but 2 of them are at the MCG, which technically acts as a home game. But it's not their home, it's their away, but you still get what I'm talking about. But they have Melbourne, Sydney and Carlton. Now again, Melbourne and Sydney in the next 2 weeks, I think, are really big for Collingwood, as Melbourne and Sydney are both teams contending for the top 4. So they would be looking to try and pull out a result in one of these games. Both very tough. Melbourne at the MCG on a Friday night. Sydney at the SCG, kind of during the day, so they could be able to pinch them there. But yeah, that's what they've got. And then they've got Carlton in round 23, which is a big chance for a win and a big chance not Carlton out of the top 8. So I think all 3 of these games for Collingwood are massive, and they can slip. If they lose all 3 of these games, they can slip and fall for sure. So now on to Essendon, who have a very big and interesting run home. It's going to be seeing in round 23, one big game. But GWS versus Essendon is going to be the first game. They play the Giants away from home. And then they play the Power at Marvel, which is going to be, I reckon that's going to be a good game. But round 23, as I've said already many times in this video, is going to be the centrepiece. It is going to be a really big game for Essendon, because if they win this game, they'll say goodbye to the Tigers' finals hopes. And the Tigers will probably end up missing if they prevail against them in round 23. So I think that's a really big game for the Bombers and the Tigers in round 23. I think, again, that game is really going to shape how the top 8 could be playing out. So the Bombers, their season is already over, but they still do have a part to play, and round 23 could be a big one. But apart from that, they do have a pretty good run home. Giants and Power, those are two pretty good games. They should be able to take the Giants, and at Marvel they should be able to take the Power. But again, all coming down to round 23. Now to Fremantle, whose top 4 hopes are hanging right now. They are unclear whether they're going to be making the top 4. They're in 6th position now, and they have a pretty interesting run home. The Western Bulldogs at Marvel looks to be their biggest concern, but they just have to snag the points there at Marvel before they play the Eagles. Sorry about that, guys. Before they play the Eagles and the Giants at Manuka and at Optus. Sorry about that little technical error there. That was an accident. My finger misclicked. But yeah, they've got the Eagles and the Giants in the final 2 rounds, which you'd be feeling like they'd be able to bag the points there. So that's 8 points already. But this is going to be the biggest 50-50 game for Fremantle at the end of the year. So I think they really have to be bagging the points here. That draw could really harm their chance of a top 4. And lose the game to the Western Bulldogs, and their top 4 hopes are over. Now to Geelong, who are probably certain to finish in top of the table spot, as they have 3 relatively simple games to finish off their year. So they have 2 games, 2 of the 3 at GMHBA Stadium, which is going to really help. But yeah, they have the Saints and the Eagles at that ground, which is going to really help. And then they have the Suns in round 22 at Metricon. Again, the Cats, such a quality opponent, such a quality side. You'd be feeling like they wouldn't drop any of these 3 games. They should be able to win them all. And probably all of them by some sort of significant margin. So you'd be feeling like the Cats, if you're a Cats supporter right now, you're going pretty well. And I'd be feeling like if there was to be a game to be worried about, it would be versus the Suns. But other than that, I think you'd be tracking on pretty well for 13 in a row, heading into the finals, which would be some sort of form. And, pretty simple run home for a Geelong point of view. Now to Gold Coast, which have a very tough run home coming up. They have 2 or 3 games which are tough, and those are versus the Hawks and the Cats. One after another, the domino effect. The Hawks at UTAS is going to be the big problem. If they had the Hawks at Metricon, they would have probably been able to beat them. But at UTAS, it can be a different story. And if you don't know UTAS, it can opt to be a problem. And Gold Coast, I don't even know if they've played at UTAS, probably have. But if they haven't, it's going to be a whole new thing for them. And could be good, could be bad. But yeah, I feel like the Hawks get the job done in that one. Which is going to, send their finals hopes goodbye. And then in round 22, they have a clash to see where they're really at against the Cats. And again, feel like they don't get the job done in that. So that they do have a tough run home from my point of view. And then in round 23, a free win, you'd say, against North Melbourne at Marvel. But is it a free win? Probably, but who knows. But yeah, I feel like they do have a tough run home to finish off the year. So it's unfortunately enough this year, it's not going to be Gold Coast year for finals. Now to the Giants, who have shown disappointment this season and have shown disappointment a lot in their past 5 or 6 games. And it is a tough run home from their point of view. They're playing teams that have either A, improved drastically, or B, contending for top 4, top 8. So the Bombers, that's the team that I'm talking about that have improved drastically. They'll probably be a tough team to take down, even though it's a Giants stadium, but they've been so poor lately, the Giants. And yeah, you feel like the Bombers get the job done there. The Doggies and the Giants, that is a no-brainer at Marvel. The Doggies will get the job done there. And then the Giants and the Dockers in round 23. It's going to be a key game for the Dockers. So as the Giants, you just got to try and do your best to just try and knock out their top 4 chances. But yeah, been very disappointing in the past 5 or 6 weeks, and I wouldn't be surprised if they were to be more disappointing in these next 3 games, because it's a very tough run home, and for a poor side that's been pretty poor over the past 5-6 weeks, I think, again, really tough to even win one of these. I think it's going to be really tough for them. Now to the Hawks, who have shown glimpses of some good signs over the course of this year. Playing 2 of their last 3 games at UTAS could help, definitely. And they play 3 very winnable games. Now, they do play 3 teams that are trying to look for top 8, so the competition will be tough. But I do feel like the Hawks are up to it and could pinch any of these games. And if not, they could pinch all 3 of them, knowing how unpredictable the Hawks have been this year. But last week versus Saints wasn't great, but I still do have them getting over the line against the Suns at UTAS. Richmond versus Hawthorn should be an interesting game. I don't see them winning this, and I think, again, it all does come to round 23 to whether the Dogs make finals between the Hawks and the Dogs. And I think that is going to be a massive game. It is at UTAS. But yeah, I think that's going to be a massive game to shape whether the Dogs make the finals or not. And I think Hawthorn have a big role to play as they are playing them in round 23. But look, it's a fairly tough run home. All three of these games are winnable, but also all 3 of them are losable. Now to the Demons, which the minor premiership looks to be still within their, finishing first looks to still be within their grasp. But it does get tough compared to what the Cats have and then what they have as their run home. If we remember back to a little bit earlier, the Cats have the Saints, the Suns, and the Eagles. The Demons have the Pies, the Blues, and the Lions. And those are 3 teams that are inside the top 8, and 2 of them are currently contending or inside the top 4. So I think the competition for the Demons is going to be really tough, and I think they're going to have to be their very best to win these games. Now, they can still slip out of the top 4 if all results go horribly against them. And the Pies and the Lions looms to be a 50-50 game, both of these 2 games. So I think if they drop both of them, they'll end up being outside the top 4. But however, I feel like I would have them back to win probably, they can win all 3, but they can also lose all 3. So I think it's really going to be big. I think if they're going to be getting 1 win, I think it will definitely be against Carlton. And I think the other 2 games could really go either way. But a big run home for Melbourne, and it's seeing if they can really contend with the best of the best. Because if they drop off here, they can miss the top 4, and that'd be damaging to their flag hopes. But yeah, I think these next 3 weeks are going to be absolutely crucial for the Demons. Now, North Melbourne have had a season of disappointment this year. They look like they were going to be a little bit better in the past few weeks against Collingwood and North Melbourne, but they have dropped back off to their very worst and have a very tough run home. And when you are a lower team, it is always a tough run home. But none of these games are easy wins for North Melbourne. None of them they probably won't even contend in any of these games. They have Sydney, Adelaide, and Gold Coast. Now, I think the biggest game for them to actually maybe even snag a win is probably versus Gold Coast. Now, you may be like, nah, Flame Footy is against Adelaide, but Adelaide play really well at home. So I think if they do have a chance, it could be Gold Coast at Marvel, but I still don't feel like they're going to be winning a game. I think they won't be winning a game in this last 3, but the biggest game is going to be this one versus Sydney, because it's going to be how much percentage are they going to give to Sydney. I think that's the big thing. They cannot let themselves get scored heavily against, because now for these teams that are outside the top 8, they've just got to be trying to not give teams easy percentage and not give teams easy wins. So, yeah. But again, I think for North Melbourne, I think it's a really tough run home. And I think they had the capability of losing all these games by 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 plus points. It's going to be a horror run home for North Melbourne. It's been a horror year for them. Now to Port Adelaide, have a massive run home, and again, they only play one side in the race for the top 8, but they still do have some other big games to see where they're at. This is the gauge of where they're at, pretty much. So they do play 2 games at the Adelaide Oval. They have Richmond, big game, 50-50 game, massive game, because if they lose it, well, then Richmond could go in and make the top 8. But if they win it, then they're denting Richmond's hopes of a top 8 finish. Now, Essendon versus Port Adelaide, 50-50, and the showdown versus the Crows, also 50-50. I think they have a very 50-50 run home. I think all these results, they can go 3-0 in these results, or they could go 0-3. So I think for Port Adelaide, it's a really big run home, and a challenging one of that too. But I think they're all 50-50 games. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how Port Adelaide go in their last, what would it be, 3 games of the year. Now to Richmond, who would be looking to try and get the points against Port Adelaide to try and finish in the top 8. And other than that, they do have Hawthorn and Essendon to go. Again, all these games are really 50-50. Again, just like Port Adelaide for Richmond. Now, again, I think it's really going to be down to round 23 to whether they make the top 8 or not, depending on other results. But I feel like they'll probably end up losing to Port Adelaide, winning to Hawthorn. And I think, again, this game versus Essendon is going to mean the absolute world for Richmond. And I think it's going to be very interesting to see how that one plays out in round 23. And that'll be whether they get a top 8 spot or not, in my opinion. But I do think they'll beat the Hawks. So, St Kilda play all top 4 quality sides. Now, Brisbane aren't in the top 4, but they are a top 4 quality side. So, they are playing sides that are quality top 4 opponents, quality opponents in their last 3 weeks. Have the Cats, Kardinia Park, the Lions and the Swans both at Marvel. They are at Marvel, but I don't think that really helps. And I think their finals hopes are gone. Now, yes, they may be a game, half a game ahead of Richmond, a game ahead of the Dogs, but really, with a run home like this, I think the Saints fans, they won't be making finals this year. It's a tough run home. And even pulling off a result, even pulling off a win in just one of these games would be showing something really special for the Saints. So I think really from here, it's probably not about finals, but it's about just trying to pull a result, one win out of here. And I think that'd be almost a bit of a win out of a loss for the Saints. But a very challenging run home. We all knew that, and very tough. Sydney have a massive run home to finish off the year. They've got North Melbourne at Marvel, but then the next 2 games from here are interesting ones. Have Collingwood and Watlooms to be a real top 4 shootout at the SCG, and then St Kilda. So I think, again, I did just touch base with St Kilda, but I think the St Kilda game means whether they're going to make the top 4 or not, and maybe even for the Saints whether they're going to make the top 8 or not. So I think that game is another big game around 23. St Kilda versus Sydney. I think Collingwood as well is a massive game. So after North Melbourne, their last 2 weeks of the season are challenging. But a side like Sydney, I think they'll be able to do them. But I think it's going to be a very tough last 2 weeks, but a very challenging and very interesting last 2 weeks for the Swans. And that'll decide whether they make the top 4 or not. So now to West Coast, who have a very tough run home. They're playing 2 sides currently inside the top 8, which are Fremantle and Geelong in round 22 and round 23. Geelong, Kardinia Park is going to be really tough, and the Dockers in a derby, you'd be thinking is really tough. I think their chance of a win, however, is versus Adelaide at Optus Stadium. Adelaide, though, they aren't an easy team to beat. They try their best. But again, I think if they're going to get a result, it'll be versus Adelaide. I think that's their only chance for a win. I think Fremantle and Geelong will just be too hard for the Eagles. But they are improving, though, so that is a good sign. But, yeah, I think Adelaide is their best chance for a win. Tough run home for the Eagles. So now on to the Western Bulldogs. This run home is going to decide whether they make the top 8 or not. Now, looking at this, it's not too bad of a run home. They have 2 of their last 3 games at Marvel. They have the Dockers at Marvel, round 21, round 22, the Giants at Marvel, round 23, the Hawks at UTAS. I think, again, for the Dogs, it's going to be coming down to round 23, Hawks at UTAS, especially if they lose to the Dockers. If they win against the Dockers, though, I think they'll be okay, regardless of the result in round 23. But I think this Dockers game is going to be big, but I still think they'll have to win this game depending on how Richmond are going. So I think the Doggies, they'll be looking to win all 3, but if they do drop against Fremantle, that could really hurt their top 8 chances. But I think for the Western Bulldogs, it is a not a bad run home, not going to lie, for the Western Bulldogs. Well, that's going to wrap us up for this video. We are very time short now. But anyway, that's going to wrap us up for the video. So I do hope that you guys did enjoy this video. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe and hit that notification bell, sending guys another video on the channel. Thank you guys all so much. Bye everyone. Flaming Footy out.